proper introduction. So as you know, Ehab was abroad the Canadian boat to Gaza when it was intercepted on November 4th by the Israeli Navy in international waters, 35 miles off the coast of Gaza. He and another Canadian flotilla participants were subsequently jailed for 5 days in Israel. Ehab will discuss with you, will talk to you about his experiences on the ship, in detention, in prison, and the future challenges to Israel's illegal blockade of Gaza. As you know, the blockade is in violation of international law. It is in violation of the Fourth Geneva Convention, which is against the collective punishment of any people. And the blockade of Gaza, it is a collective punishment of the people of Gaza. So it is illegal and unethical. So Lotayef, he's a longtime social justice activist. He's based here in Montreal, was born in Cairo, and he moved to Montreal in 1989. He is also a photographer. I've seen some of his photography. A Juno Award-nominated songwriter, a playwright, yes, talented, and a poet. His play, Crossing Gibraltar, was produced in 2005 by CBC Radio. He's a committed activist for the resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and he makes frequent trips to the Middle East. But above all, I've known Ehab for, I don't know, 9, 10 years. And above all, he is a man of convictions, he is a man of integrity, he is a man of courage. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome him and welcome him back.
It's a bit difficult to start, where to start from when we're talking about something like the flotillas and the attempts to break the siege of Gaza. I will not go very far back, but I will start from here actually. A Belgian activist that we worked with is also a photographer, Asma, and she shared with me this photograph and the quote from a girl that actually she adopted in Gaza. And this quote really signifies why, one of the reasons at least, why we need to continue to work for the cause of the people of Gaza within the larger context of the Palestinian problem or solving the Palestinian issue. But the people of Gaza in particular are isolated. They are really living in an open air prison. They can't get their voice out to the world. And without that voice, others have to try to do it for them, to bring their voice out. So when we talk about breaking the siege of Gaza, when we talk about the efforts of breaking the siege by sea, in some cases we fall into the mistake as well and portray it as an aid mission. It really is far beyond an aid mission. It is, maybe the aid is a small part in it, it's a symbolic part, even if it's a really needed part of it. The major parts there are that the people of Gaza are denied their humanity. They're denied the ability to move. They're denied the ability to live a normal life. And they have been for, not only for the last 4 or 5 years since the Hamas government was elected, but for many, many years before that, just because of their geographic situation and their physical isolation from even the rest of the land of Palestine, and because of the strange context that they fell into when their population nearly doubled in 1948-49 because they got the internally displaced refugees that came from the rest of the southern Palestine into the Gaza Strip. So they have to also feel that the world does not forget about them. And that's exactly what comes from the statement here by Hind, who when she hears that the world cares about her, she feels that she's not left alone. And I think that applies to the young and the old and everybody in the Gaza Strip. Also putting pressure on Israel so that we cannot let Israel feel comfortable while it violates the basic human rights of peoples. and feel that it is time for Israel to feel like South Africa felt. And it's overdue, actually, like South Africa felt in the 80s and 90s, that it is a rogue state. It is a state that is in violation of basic rights. And a part of what we are doing is to bring that to the attention of the world. And lastly but not least, in the first Freedom Flotilla of 2010, the most famous boat which is the Mavi Marmara, the Turkish boat, there were, among the 700-800 participants in that flotilla, there were 3 Canadians. And this was the starting point of the Canadian boat to Gaza. The starting point was that we are living in a country where our government has become the first and foremost supporter of Israel, right or wrong. Before the Solomon Islands and Palau, which are island states that are basically supporting Israel no matter what Israel does, Canada is now ahead of those. And that is why it was very important to have not a participation in the flotilla by Canadian individuals, but to have the Canadian effort in the forefront of the flotilla work, exactly like our shameful government is in the forefront of the support of Israel. And that's where it started in 2010, in the summer of 2010, where Canadian activists from coast to coast came together and said, we have to have presence in the next work to break the siege, not only symbolic presence by individuals, but we need to have presence as at least a boat shared by Canadians, maybe with other nationalities. And I am really as proud of the work that was done between June 2010 all the way till September 2011, as much, or maybe even more, than being proud of my presence physically on the boat that sailed to Gaza in November of this year, or in this month. Because that work, that relentless work by a large number of people that created committees and organized themselves and managed to gain the confidence of thousands of Canadians, organizations, and individuals, that when we started, we were just hoping to raise $100,000 or $150,000 with which we can combine with another campaign to have a shared boat. And at the end, we became, on the international level, one of the most well-financed and organized campaigns within the whole flotilla. Is really something that is very meaningful to us and to the movement and to the people of Canada that really put their money where their mouth is. So in the middle of 2010, after the Israeli attack on the 5 boats, then plus 1, because the Rachel Corrie came late to join that flotilla, we started the campaign to have a Canadian boat to Gaza, and we started by contacting the Americans and said, how about having a North American boat? And they said, no, we're going to have an American boat. We already chose a name for it. It's going to be the Audacity of Hope. And if you want to send a couple of people on the boat, you're welcome. Typical American attitude. And we said, no, you know what? We're going to try first to have our own boat before we accept to be just guests on your boat. And we started to work on the local level, and we started to work on the international level with campaigns that have participated in the first Freedom Flotilla, with Greece, with Turkey, with, does everybody have their cell phones off? We started to work with campaigns that participated in the previous flotillas, coordinated them, trying to learn from their experience, but we also decided to build a very structured and organized campaign locally, so we can stand our own ground. And as I was telling people 9 months ago, at the beginning of this year, we know very well how we raised the first 40, 50,000 to 100,000. We started to know who contributed what and whatever. But we have no idea how we jumped from 100,000 to over 300,000. Really, people started to jump in without, groups contacted us from small towns and cities all across Canada saying, can we do a fundraiser for you? What do we need to do a fundraiser for you? And it really started rolling very, very quickly in a way that we couldn't believe that there is this energy. It made one believe that if you take a position and you organize the work, you will get the support you need. I used to work with many people in the Muslim community, for example, when we're talking about building a mosque or building a school, say, just let's make the decision and then the money will come. And you look at this first and you say, no, I mean, there is a limit. But this is one of the experiences where one really realized there is no limit. We got contacted by campaigns in Australia, in Belgium, in Denmark, and in Germany, who told us, you know, the maximum we can raise is 20,000 or 30,000. Can we give you that money and send people on your boat? So instead of us jumping on the American boat, it became the other way around, where people wanted to join our boat, and it did happen. And it was actually a big strength, because in the summer of this year, when the flotilla tried to organize itself to sail from Greece, and there were somewhere between 8 and 11 boats that were trying to leave, and those boats were confronted by different kinds of difficulties. The Canadian boat at that time, although the new kid on the block, was quite a well-organized boat, and although I did not travel to be on the boat, I was doing the support work from here, I did realize how clearly structured our campaign was compared to other campaigns. And this is also a very important thing. It's always quite important to remember that it's not only the intention, it's not only the will, it is also the organization, and it's also the hard work that gets you somewhere. Unfortunately, everything was prepared, the banners were prepared, the boat was bought, fantastic work was done to find the right boat for the right number of people in Greece by a group of people that had a steering committee of 10, 12 people, none of whom had any idea about maritime experience or boats or whatever. We sought experience, we got the experience. People dedicated their time and their lives and left their jobs and traveled to Greece to be in there just investigating and trying to find that. So we had everything in place, but we didn't count for this. We had a huge public campaign as a flotilla, a very strong campaign that was happening. The whole world started to hear about it, but Israel was working from underneath, from the backside, and it worked its way, twisting the Greeks' arms and bribing the Greeks in their moment of weakness till the point, and it had done that with Cyprus before. A year before, Cyprus denied boats leaving to Gaza because of the same thing. After a few boats left from Cyprus, it was pressured by Israel not to allow any more boats to leave. It happened with Greece. I think nothing can show it more than this cartoon of Netanyahu and Papandreou. And it was a sad moment where the Canadian boat managed to leave from Agios Nicholas on Crete, and that's exactly the route they took before being stopped by the Greek Coast Guard and forced to return to port. The same happened to the Audacity of Hope, the American boat. They were stopped after they tried to leave. The only one boat that managed to sail away was the Dignité, which is a French boat that originated from France and came to Greece to pick up some passengers. The Greeks tried to play the same game with it, but it was very difficult for them since it was not originating its trip from Greece. So the Dignité managed to sneak out after 4 or 5 days of jumping from port to port. It managed to leave towards actually, its destination was Port Said, and then from there it followed the international waters border of Egypt towards the Gaza Strip. At this point, all boats were stuck in Greece, except, other than the Dignity that was caught by the Israelis in early August, except the Irish boat, which was already in Turkey and had faced a sabotage attack. Its propeller was cut and could not leave, so it did its repairs and it waited in Turkey. And the Mavi Marmara, the Turkish boat that was returned by Israel from the 2010 attack. We again took the low profile as the Canadian boat, and again with the limited experience we had, we very quietly, with connections with the port authorities, managed to get our boats out of Greece into Turkey without doing a lot of public announcements about it, and decided that if we want to achieve something, we need to be much more cunning than what happened the time before. And we took the risk. We took the risk. We worked with the Irish only, the 2 boats that were outside. We informed the other campaigns to a very limited extent of what the situation was and what we were planning for, and we kept it so quiet. We didn't discuss anything by phone. We tried to really do it in a very professional way that the information will not go out. Our closest friends, some of us, even their families, did not know what was going on. And we sacrificed the pre-media work and the pre-media attention with the hope that we will be able to capitalize on that after we announce ourselves. We also, although the funds were getting very, very tight at that point, we also decided that we will try to work with the funds that we have, even if we get in debt a little bit, again, to be able to achieve the same thing, and we can always catch up later. So between 2 campaigns, which is the Canadian campaign and the Irish campaign, we decided, I mean, when I say the Canadian campaign, by the way, again, the Tahrir is 90 or 80-some% Canadian. The Belgian, the Danish, and the Australian, and a little bit of the German campaign contributed to it. So all those 5 campaigns really were informed and agreed on this, working quietly and trying to get out. And we decided to adapt our work under a new name, which is the Freedom Waves to Gaza, because the strategy of going one big flotilla did not work. Maybe the strategy of going a boat or 2 every now and then will be more effective and more efficient and easier to materialize. So we decided to just sorry, one second. The translation is that.
Yeah, it's really.
Maybe. No, I was. So it was very clear to us that we need to do this quiet, silent work, and to the extent that on my way personally to Turkey, I stopped in Dublin to tie the last knots that were not tied with the Irish, because there was so much details that we did not want to discuss electronically or by telephone, that we needed to, get things together face to face before we just move everybody to disembark. And we arrived in Turkey with telling all the people that were designated to be on board, who again, what we couldn't do, if some of you followed our campaign in the summer, we sent call outs for people to send their resumes and who wants to come on the boat and all that. Again, it might have been unfair not to involve people that way, but that was the only, we had to choose from people we knew. We went to the Americans and told them, now since you can't sail, do you want to send a couple of people on the Canadian boats? And they did welcome. By the way, their campaign went broke. After the Audacity of Hope couldn't leave, their campaign went broke and they had to donate their boat to another campaign, to the Free Gaza campaign. So the Canadian, the US boat to Gaza campaign was really finished. So we went and asked them that we can take some of their people. And we had everybody very much clearly committed to that they are coming to Turkey. They don't know. All they knew is that they had to be in Istanbul before a certain, or by a certain hour on a certain day. They did not know where they're going after that. They did not know what is the port of departure. I kid you not, I did not know the port of departure. Sandra, who was doing the coordination there, she and the captain were the only two who knew the port of departure. So we knew the area, and we said, arrive in Istanbul, you'll be given a phone number, you'll call that phone number, it will tell you where to go. So, and I mean, all that, and we were saying, who are we fighting? I mean, the Israelis probably have such a huge intelligence machine that all what we're doing is futile. But we're just trying what we can. I mean, we're really convincing ourselves that we have to try, and we cannot guarantee the result. We cannot say that a few civilian activists can really fool one of the biggest intelligence apparatuses in the world. So, I was sitting there myself, for example, I arrived a couple of days earlier in Turkey, and I was sitting in a small motel doing some work from there, and the people would ask me, why are you here? And I would make up stories, and I feel so stupid, I make up stories. I'm meeting those Irish friends that I met last year in Europe, and they're coming here, and like, what the hell am I saying, and anyway, I mean, it really, at the end of the day, it really worked. We all, the boat was moved from one port to another. The Irish boat was also moved from the port that it was in to another port. And we got together not in Fethiye, which is the port where the boat will depart from, but in a close by port, which is a smaller port, Göcek. And to the extent that the Al Jazeera reporter, Al Jazeera English reporter who was there, I told him we have to go tonight to Göcek. And say, check what? I said, no, we're going to Göcek. I said, go check what? So, I mean, they're small examples, but they really show that people didn't know at all what the plans were. Then we met the first hurdle that we really faced when we were getting the permission to depart. Both the Irish boat and our boat, although our boat has a capacity of about 50 people, and the Irish boat had a capacity of about 20, they're both registered as private yachts. And the Turks in Fethiye, we have quite good understanding that they knew what those boats were about. They never said it officially, but the word Gaza was mentioned a couple of times by side people. And so they decided to contact the authorities because they were saying, we can't give you the departure. We didn't file to depart to Gaza. We filed to depart to Greece. So they didn't give us the okay to depart, but they said, we send the papers to Ankara. I mean, that's a very strange thing to do if it's just a normal passenger boat departing for a private trip. Then they decided to limit the number of passengers on the boats to the maximum that's limited that they can, which, I mean, to the minimum that they can, basically, which is 12 passengers per boat. Now, that was a big problem. We tried to work with them. There was no way, and I think here their philosophy was very clear. When Israel knows that these boats left from Turkey, they want to say, we did all things by the book. We did it very strict. We were very strict with those people, but we had no reason to deny them departure. But that brought us into a huge problem. The Irish had 15 people, so 15 to 12 is not a big deal. We had committed to 32 persons, and that was a huge problem. 32 persons from 6 different countries, including 10 reporters. And that really was an evening that was extremely stressful. And of course, it fell on the representatives of the steering committee that were there to manage to do this. And we couldn't but apply 2 strategies here. Who is absolutely essential for the trip, which is the captain and a couple of the organizers. And let's take as many journalists as we can. So from like we had 2 from Al Jazeera Arabic, we told them they can send only 1. We had 2 from Al Jazeera English, we told them we can send only 1. We had 2 from Democracy Now!, we told them we can send only 1. We had 2 from Arabic newspapers, 1 in Lebanon and 1 in Egypt, and we decided to take only 1 of those. So the boat had 12 people, 6 of them actors, 1 captain and 5 journalists. And many angry, at least at the beginning they were angry. I think by the next morning they lost their anger, but they were very angry. And even the Al Jazeera Arabic boss, he was with me on the phone saying, how come you didn't study your stuff better than this? And I faxed him the papers of the boat, which say that the boat is registered for 50 people, but it's up to, at the end, the port authorities in the port of departure to apply its own rulings. The boat in Greece couldn't leave to Gaza, but there was never a problem in it leaving with 50 people, in principle. So we had, again, it was a very difficult thing, but we had to work with that. And finally, we also tried to stay very low profile. So this is the Tahrir, as it stood in Fethiya. And this is the SEER-shuh, the Irish boat standing docked behind the Tahrir. And we were very careful while we were loading the medical aid supplies on the Tahrir to disguise them again and not show that this is an activist operation. And we only came out in the last moments after we had all our papers, all the passports stamped, everything clear. Only at that point did we get on the boat on Wednesday and got out our banner and started showing it to the journalists that couldn't leave with us, to take photos of it. And these are some of the people that were supposed to be on the boat that are seeing us leave, and obviously very highly emotional. It was late afternoon, and that's basically where we were in Fethiya, up there. And this was our plan as if we were going from Fethiya to Rhodes, but somewhere in the middle of the way, as soon as we get into international waters, we will divert and head to Gaza. And this is the satellite track of exactly how we did it. So as soon as we were in international waters, and the Irish ship was a bit ahead of us, we diverted our route, and we went, and we were followed by the Turkish Coast Guard actually for quite a while on that trip. And then we started to get ready to familiarize ourselves with the boat. That's Kit from the States, and and Karen DeVito from Vancouver starting to look around the kitchen facilities, etc. This is the medicine that we were taking with us to Gaza. These are the journalists. This is Lina from Egypt, from Al-Masri Al-Yom, and this is Jihan from Democracy Now!, starting to familiarize themselves with the computer systems. We also had actually a very efficient computer satellite connection. We were online throughout the 2 days before we got our communications blocked by the Israelis. We were emailing where the Al Jazeera people had additional satellite connections, so they were doing that all the time to relieve the bottleneck from our central system. It was really a fully functional network on the boat. And here is the SEER-shuh, the Irish boat, as seen from the Tahrir. The first night, the main event of the first night was that we were being followed by the Turkish Coast Guard till we kept going, and every now and then I'd wake up and David, who was like David Heap from London, Ontario, was the other main organizer on the boat, would keep looking and trying to ask the captain, who's Greek, George, are we still being followed? And he says, don't worry, we're now in international waters, even if they're following us, nobody can do anything to us. And by the morning, we realized it's a beautiful morning, the sky is clear. And by the way, one of the other things that happened was that when we lost some of our passengers, some of those who were supposed to act as crew with George. Now, we really had a captain with no crew. We had no medical people on the boat at all. There were things that were really worrisome. George is a very experienced and very clever captain. He took Michael, the Australian young man who was with us, and Majd, who is a Palestinian from Haifa, who joined us, and he trained them to be his crew, and they even took the wheel when he was sleeping at night. I mean, it's a miracle that we made it. And when I woke up at night, I was thinking, are we going straight, or are we just going left and right? But I mean, the two young men were really wonderful. They really took, each of them took a 3.5 to 4 hour shift while George took some rest, and they managed. And sometimes I'd see the SEER-shuh on this side, the Irish boat, and sometimes I'd see it on this side. Are they wavering or are we wavering? It doesn't matter. But following the satellite link, we looked that we were going on a straight line, at least on that scale. So it was okay. So for the second day, we had passed Cyprus, and we were preparing for Friday, and we said if we keep going at this same speed, we will hit the Israeli declared exclusion zone somewhere in the middle of the night. And we had a quick meeting, and we said we do not want that to happen. We don't want to, and we contacted the Irish. We had walkie-talkie connection with the Irish, who, by the way, on their boat did not have any media and did not have any digital communication. They just had sat phone and the walkie-talkie that I bought from Club Price. That was really our main mean of communication, but it worked fine. It worked perfectly well, till the Israelis took it. So we agreed that we would slow down so that we only hit this 100 nautical mile exclusion zone in daylight at 8 o'clock in the morning. And we spent that night going at a slower speed, and woke up in the morning. We asked, George had taken the wheel. Where are we? He said we're about 105 miles, and then we started to be very, very attentive. So basically in this map, it shows, so this is where we were at 8:20 in the morning on the Friday. This red line that I put here is the 100 nautical miles from the shore of Gaza. And this is, by the way, 9, not 7. It's a typo here, I mean. So as you can see, we drifted a little bit out here, but then we went back to this straight line, and we went slower in those 12 hours here or so that we don't hit this in the middle of the night. Now, we got here and we started, let me share with you some photos. This is a banner that was made by school children in Alberta, actually, that was sent to us, that we put on the boat. We started putting the stuff on the boat at this point. Unfortunately, there are many photos of the Irish boat that was not very well decorated from our side because we had the journalists and the cameras. There are not many photos the other way around. And even if they took it, it wasn't their cameras that the Israelis confiscated. We managed to upload our photos as we went. This is Kit changing the front flag to a Palestinian flag. This is myself sitting next to the Palestinian flag. These are the 6 people, or 5 of the 6 people that, no, that's the 6 actually, the 6 delegates that Kit, David Heap, Karen DeVito, Majd Kayal, Michael Coleman, and myself, again in the morning as we were in the 100 nautical mile zone. And this is David Heap trying to make as many phone calls as possible before we get interrupted, basically. So we nearly reached here, which is about 50 nautical miles, and we started to see Israeli frigates on the sides. We started putting notes in Hebrew on the doors, and I had them printed as well, saying that the blockade is illegal, attacking us as piracy, and we made copies of the Majd, who's fluent in Hebrew, started writing, and we prepared ourselves, and all of a sudden the expected happened, and there was no more satellite communication. The communications started ending one after the next, and then the boats came closer, and we started getting hailed. And Tahrir, this is the Israeli Navy. What is your destination? David Heap in the previous night told me if they asked us about our destination, we should say that our destination is the conscience of mankind. So I like that very much. As a poet, I like that very much. But I also remembered that that the Israelis put on their website when they intercepted the Dignity in August. As soon as the Dignity replied our destination in Gaza, they cut the communications and they attacked. So I decided not to tell them the word Gaza for as long as possible. So we keep going as much as possible. So they would ask, what is your destination? I would say, our destination is the conscience of mankind. Okay, what is your final destination? Let's make up something. Our final destination is the betterment of mankind. and the guy was going nuts, so he switched. Ehab Lotayef, hal tasma'ni. He started speaking in Arabic. So I told David I'm not going to answer him in Arabic. So David, who's fluent in both French and Spanish, started answering in Spanish. We're really having fun. I mean, at that point, we were really having fun. The Irish were taking it much more serious. But and it took a long time. And if you go on the web, you will find they put on the web some of that communication. But some of it, and I can tell you that assertively, is montage. They cut and pasted. They didn't put the full communication. And you would realize if you hear it, the difference in sound quality all of a sudden. And when I start telling them the blockade is illegal, they cut it off at that point in the middle of the sentence. So and then at a certain point, David took the mic and told them, Israeli Navy, we need to talk to our partners. Back off. They're the Navy. He said, back off, Israeli Navy. So we changed to another channel and we started talking between us and the SEER-shuh, trying to decide what to do here. Because the Israelis at a certain point said, maybe we can inspect your boats and let you go. And this was I mean, at the end of the day, it was clearly a trap. They were trying to find a way to board our boats without having to confrontation. But on the other hand, it was a very appealing thing. But the real point here is that we tried very much to respect our public campaigns. And in our public campaigns, we had never told people that we're going to negotiate with the Israelis. And we gathered all the people on the boat and we said, if there is unanimous agreement here to negotiate with the Israelis, then it has to be unanimous. If one person is not in agreement, we cannot start that whatsoever. The Irish said we're not going to get into that, and we just canceled that and we said, that's it. So we told the Israelis, look, you want to board our boats, we are not going to physically resist, but we are telling you, you are not welcome on the boats. And there is no need to use violence because you will not be faced by any violence. Then the boats started closing, closing on us. There was at least 15 boats in the area. And they would let us come close to the SEER-shuh, and then they would all of a sudden have more closure on us. Of course, at this point was the moment of truth for us to start throwing away in the sea any equipment that we didn't want them to get hold of. So I took my laptop, and it was a very difficult moment. I'm serious. It was a very difficult moment. I smashed it and I threw it in the sea. You couldn't have stuff with passwords and information and stuff. You don't know what's on it. Fall in their hands. Actually, the Dignity the year before, even in the summer, they even threw the satellite phones and the cell phones and everything. I mean, it's a moment that you have to take really tough decisions at that point. So we threw 3 laptops in the sea, and then they said, okay, everybody, the Israelis started giving us orders. Everybody come on the front bow. And at the same time, the water cannon, as you can see here, started spraying the front bow. So I was standing in the front bow telling them, you want people to come here, cut this water, because people will not come. So people gathered in the captain's cabin. All the journalists, and the captain's cabin is like basically is something this big. Everybody gathered inside because they were spraying the whole boat with water. At the end, I went in as well, and we were waiting for them. And the sea wasn't the best of sea. It wasn't calm. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't calm. So they would come close to us and start with the mechanical lift to get their platform at the level of the boat. From a small, I mean, it is relatively a small, slow platform. And then all of a sudden the sea would move and then they get down again. And we are waiting. Let's get going with this. And as soon as they got on board, the second soldier to step on board slipped on the water-covered platform that they then they came into the captain's cabin from both sides. And me and David, we said, we don't want to leave the captain. We're going to stay with the captain. They had their machine guns and their lasers pointed at us. And they were telling us, no, get out. But they're telling us from both sides. So we're really stuck between them coming from both sides. They came in from this door, and David refused to go out from the other door, so they jumped, one of the guys jumped and tasered him. And then that guy also slipped and fell. And at the end of the day, they took control of us without us really offering any physical resistance. We did not move with them easily, but we did not, nobody raised a hand towards them in any way. And they took us, they made us take off anything we had on, took everything out of our pockets and put it in plastic bags, and made us sit on the back deck, on the seats that are available on the back deck, and started separating us, the women on this side, the men on this side. Michael, who's a young man and a bit outspoken, they put him alone at the end of the bench, and I took out the papers, the Hebrew papers that said this attack is illegal or whatever, and kept holding it to them, and the guy would come and snatch it, and I would take it back. And we played this game for about 5 minutes, you know, till another guy came sneaky and grabbed it from my hand. They took down all the banners that we had on the boat. They took down the flags, both the Comoros flags, which is the boat's flag as a Comoros flag, and the Palestinian flag right in front, and they put Israeli flags on both sides of the boat. And they took away all the Hebrew signs that we had on, and then they said, we're going to take you inside, don't offer any resistance. They took us 2 by 2 inside to the back area, which is a small seating area. And then the weirdest thing happened. They started to fall asleep.
What?
They started to fall asleep. The Israeli soldiers started to fall asleep. They left 3 guarding us, and they went into the large area of the boat. And I went to get something. They allowed me to go get something from my bag. And there was like 20 soldiers with their balaclavas on, falling asleep all over the place. And the two of the 3 that were guarding us were standing like this. And talk about dangerous situations. I mean, Karen realized that there is a laser pointing on her head and the guy is falling asleep. And she was yelling for the commander to come and, you know, like, make this guy take his gun down, because if he falls asleep and shoots her. So this was the first sign in my head that this whole contingent of special elite forces, whatever that I used, was scrambled very quickly because they had no idea that we were coming. And I said, let's just hope that this part of the trip goes safe, because these people are really out of control. They're not within their control.
How old were they?
You can't tell, but they're not the 18-year-olds. They're a bit older than that, because they're elite unit. They're commanders unit. But they were not in any way efficient. Like, you couldn't see any efficiency in them. And then when the captain came in, I told him, now that you're on the boat and you see everything on the boat, why don't you allow us to continue to our destination? And he said, that's not my decision, and he left abruptly. We reached Ashdod. It took about 3 hours to reach Ashdod. They, by the way that they drove both our boat and the Irish boat was in a very reckless way. I mean, they over-throttled the boat. They want to really damage the boats. So they took much less time than the time we would take. It's a slowish boat. It would have taken 4+ hours to do those 50 nautical miles or 40+ nautical miles. They pushed it hard, and when we got to Ashdod, by the time we got to Ashdod, they didn't know that Majd was speaking Hebrew, so he was listening to what they're saying to each other, and we discussed among ourselves quietly, and we said, we are not going to accept to be removed to Israeli soil, because strangely enough, the people from the Dignité and the people from the previous flotilla, they were charged by illegally entering Israel, which is ridiculous, which doesn't make sense. They take you forcefully to Israel, and then they charge you by illegally coming on Israeli soil. So we decided, at least, and we saw some media on the dock, so we said we have to make it very clear that we are being taken against our will. Some of us did it in a more more resistive way than others. I personally was dragged. I didn't want to lose my bag, so I kept my bag in my hand. I was dragged. When it came to David and Michael, they were carried really, and they were beaten a little bit. That David was limping for a couple of days. The journalists did it easier than that, and that was the point where now, I mean, here you can see in a couple of pictures. That's where. So this is one of the Israeli boats, the small ones, trying to get between the Tahrir and the SEER-shuh. This is them water cannoning the Tahrir. This is them boarding the SEER-shuh, and this is again the same. And here is basically, this is around the area where the whole maneuver happened, because the SEER-shuh in particular moved a little bit while they were trying to board it. We ended up in Ashdod, where there was a huge warehouse set up on the port. The port is nearly, or that part of the port, I don't know exactly, but that part of the port is dedicated to this operation. A huge warehouse that has inside it tents for strip searching. And we were searched on the boat. We were searched on the pier. We were searched inside in each one of us separately in one of those. They had also movable X-ray trucks that were standing there that they put everything through. And then we were searched again inside strip search, looking at every piece of, lapel of the shirt, trying to find memory chips or anything of the sort. Very, very, very delicate search. Yet the Al Jazeera guy managed to smuggle a chip Lina, the Egyptian girl, managed to smuggle some of her photos. And one of the big Irish guys had a memory key in his pocket that had nothing on it. And when we were leaving, he said, "This is still here." So again, so from there, after 2 hours of search, they put us on a bus and they took us to the immigration center. And this is where they started processing us one by one, the official papers. The journalists declared that they are journalists. They didn't accept that Press TV or Democracy Now! Are media. They did not accept that. It's their decision. They're not media. No, they had their press cards and everything. And I took a different strategy than most of the other activists. They said, "Do you object to being deported without seeing a judge?" I said, does that mean that I accept that I entered Israel illegally? They said, no. I said, yes, I don't mind being deported right away. All the others said that we're not signing. We're not going to accept or refuse anything. And it's good I did that, and I'm going to come about that in a minute right now. If you read the Jewish Tribune that came out today, you'll see what kind of propaganda they're doing. We stayed in that center about 4 hours. They took us one by one, for papers, and every paper is in Hebrew, and you have to go through an uphill battle to get it in English. And of course, fingerprinting and photographing and searching again is just a never-ending process. And then, while other people are being processed, they take selected people of us and take them to the Mossad or the Shin Bet or whatever intelligence unit that was handling the operation. So I was one of the lucky people that was taken to be interrogated, and the main question, and this is number 2, the main question the guy was asking is, how did you manage to leave? When did you decide to leave? For how long were you planning this? They were going crazy, not wanting to accept that we could do this without them knowing that it's going to happen. And I think this alone, even we're not planning something that would destroy Israel or anything, but this alone, I think, means a lot. Means a lot to us, and means a lot to them as well, because they have to know that they're not invincible, and the world has to know that they're not invincible, as some of us make them in our minds. So these interrogations went on, and they didn't, of course, get anything out of us, and there's nothing to get. There's nothing really to say. I mean, they wanted names of organizations. None of us gave them anything, and at the end of the day, they just took us to the prison in Ramla. We only arrived at the prison around 2 o'clock in the morning, and again, another search and another splitting your belongings. They wouldn't, for example, let you have your medicine because you might have something that you're going to commit suicide and cause them a problem. No. So you have to get issued medicine by the prison, and the prison issues you whatever medicine they want. Here, the psychological torture really started. No books, no watches, no newspapers, no paper and pen to even write. No knowledge at all of what's going to happen to you. They totally leave you in the dark that way. The other thing that struck us in the jail is that our guards were mostly of 3 ranks, either with 1 stripe, 2 stripes, or 3 stripes. And the one with 3 stripes was a Falasha Jew, an Ethiopian Jew. And whereas most of the others were, one I think was Bedouin Arab, most of the others were mixed, and one of them was a Russian Jew. And they really, regardless of the rank, their interaction among each other had nothing to do with the rank, but had more to do with the ethnicity and the race. It was really another very shocking and eye-opening situation. They would come in, and ask you to do something and you wouldn't do it, you know. And then this guy would, this guy, the Ethiopian Jew would come and, you know, very humbly and ask you to do it, you know, in a very different way. So it's really, the structure of the society is really problematic. It is problematic. There is a lot of racism in there. The jail, all in all, from the physical side, wasn't bad. After we got the free association, and we could always, more or less, most of the day be in the yard. We were only locked like from 8 to 7 in the morning. I was they had me in the cell with one of the Irish people at the beginning, and then they brought Hassan, who's the British of Pakistani origin. They put us together because we're both Muslims, and of course the second day I was there was Eid Day, and I asked them for a Quran, and they literally told me, we don't have a Quran here, we'll have to send to the terrorist prison to get your Quran. It's really again, it took them, they gave me a Quran the day before we left, basically. We managed to get one newspaper in, which we shared. I mean, I'm sure every line in it was read like 7 times. The Irish managed to get some of the books that were in their bags, so we had some books floating around. But paper and pen were also a problem. At the end, we managed to get some from the Irish ambassador, who gave us.
Did they feed you?
Yes. They did feed us. They fed us 3 times a day. But the first day they had more food, and then the food started getting less and less. Till the last day it was 1 tube of labneh cheese and 1 tomato for both me and Hassan. But there was lots of bread and lots of jam, and the tea and coffee were running all the time. It was okay. I mean, the food wasn't the problem. The problem is the uncertainty and them knowing that we're all professionals and we all have a life, and leaving us hanging, not knowing what to do. And the women were treated much worse. There were 5 women, 2 Irish, and Karen and Kit and Jihad, was the Democracy Now! Journalist, who did not acknowledge that she was a journalist, and they kept her as an activist. Karen became quite sick and emotional, and she decided she wants to go, even if she had to pay for her own ticket, something which all the rest of us totally refused to do. They didn't have as much free association between the 2 cells as much as we did. Again, it teaches you things that your diplomatic mission is your best ally. We had a Palestinian lawyer, 2 actually Palestinian lawyers that came and saw us. We were working with the ISM people in Palestine. They knew, and they found words. Let's be honest. Our consuls, the Canadian consuls, were quite okay, and we pressured them. We pressured them very, very bluntly. We told them, we hope that the Canadian government position would not affect the service that you will provide us, and you should be professional, and blah, blah, blah. And it worked. I mean, both of them tried their best. And even when David would ask them, do the Israelis lie to you as much as they lie to us? And the guy goes, it's difficult. So they did an okay job. And again, they for all intents and purposes, they got us a judge, a hearing. I said I personally waived my right for a hearing with a judge. And when I went they forced me to meet the judge, and the judge told me, I don't know why you're here. I mean, didn't you sign on Friday? I told him, you tell me. He says, well, the system is not perfect. I told him, it's really far from perfect. So the experience in jail, other than a few moments when you really doubt what they're going to do, how long they're going to keep you and stuff like that, the experience wasn't at all difficult for us. And I guess the camaraderie and the presence of a large number of people and of different types and different mentalities that managed to work and coexist together made a big difference. Again, the departure itself was another adventure. They told the Irish that 7 of them will be leaving, the 2 women and 5 of the men, and gather your stuff, and that was Wednesday noon. And then all of a sudden they said, Ehab Lotayef and David Heap as well, go get your stuff. So we went and got our stuff, and then we were shipped, and Michael, the Australian as well. We were all shipped to, again, take our stuff, and another search center in the airport, a security center in the airport, and then to holding cells, deportation cells in the airport. Again, no paper, no pen, no whatever. And all of a sudden, just an hour before our plane time, they take David away. And the time is passing, and I start banging at the door, and the guy comes, and I say, where is David? And they say, he's gonna come, why are you worried? And then like 15 minutes before the time we're supposed to be going to the plane, again, there's still no David. And then they come and get me, and I start to say, where is David? And they say, he's gonna come. And now they're very tough, you know, like, no more nice guy. He's gonna come, go. And then they put me in the back of this time in like an arrest type of van that has a cage in the back. They put me in the cage, and they put both my bags and David's bags next to me, so at least I realized that. And then they take David and they put him next to the driver in the front. He doesn't see me, so I had to yell at him, are you there? You know, I'm here. And when we get on the plane, I told him what was happening. I said, they were threatening me of not being on the plane if I don't tell them certain information. And they played that card till the end, you know, till 10 minutes before departure time. But it wasn't a joke, because when it came the time for the Irish, they missed their plane. Because British Airways refused to take more than 2 deportees at a time. They said it's a danger, according to the regulations. They can't do that. Whether that was a game by the Israelis or that was misplanned or whatever, God knows, but they also went into interrogations. Anyway, within 36 hours, everybody was out. The last out was Hassan Ghani from Press TV, but he's a very quiet and calm guy, and he was things were under control for him. So he was comfortable, demanding till the end that he wants to go to Turkey. He doesn't want to be deported to Britain, and he got what he wanted at the end. So that's the story. The most important part in the story, and this is the Givon prison.
You actually could photograph?
No, actually, it's all on the web.
You get these photos?
They're on the web.
Oh,
they have, yeah.